Surprise, folks. Bright and early. How about that? 10 a.m. Yeah. I'm even a little bit awake. A little bit. I'm getting there. By the end of the show, I should be fully eyes wide open. Not quite there yet, but we're going to lean on Logan Robinson as we always do here on FSU Seminoles Live for a 155th time. As we always say, subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live, because typically Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time, but sometimes we got to switch it up like this week. Logan, what's going on?
155 weeks practically in a row, all sporadic. You never know who's on here, but 155 weeks, and sometimes some things get switched up, but it is NFL draft week. So this whole schedule, at least on my end, is all over the place. I'm sure you're getting ready for a big stream tomorrow. So trying to wrap everything up and talk some NFL draft, some Jermaine Johnson, some transfer portal. And, I'm a morning guy, so I'm here for this. As long as I got my coffee, we're good to go, ready to rock. And plus, we're going to talk football. So, what a rough time we're going to have.
I'm a night guy. I'm a night guy, definitely. And it surprises me that you say you're a morning guy.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like, I like getting up morning and getting probably the stuff done early in the day. So then later on in the day, I can kind of chill. But I am like a night owl like you, Mark, where nobody's contacting me, nobody's talking to me. And I'm like up at 1 a.m. and just, taking care of little things. But I don't know. I'm a mix of both. Maybe.
No, I definitely do think that there's a reason the sun comes up at a certain time and the sun goes down at a certain time. That's when we should be sleeping. So I'm constantly fighting I'm going to put myself on a schedule and I'm going to start getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning. You go to bed at a reasonable time.
Yeah.
And I'm still fighting that battle, just like I'm fighting the battle of, nutrition versus what I want to eat. So the struggle is real. The struggle is real.
The struggle is real, and definitely whenever you're on NFL draft week, because like we talked about in a show that we recorded yesterday, we are definitely a little obsessed or definitely in the liking of the NFL draft, because you get to find out who is going to be the next stars, no matter even if this draft is not the most exquisite of talent. I do think there's always there's going to be a handful that will end up being, multi-year stars in the NFL. So, I'm all over the place this week.
Yeah, it's not a big quarterback draft. I was talking to an NFL draft guy yesterday, had him on, and he said that it's a pretty deep draft. He said between 25 and 75, you're pretty much, if you're doing it right, you're going to draft the same value at 75 that you did at 25. It's like razor thin, the difference in talent and value once you get past the first 20 or 25 players. So should be interesting. It all gets going on Thursday. We'll get to that in just a second. We want to get to the news of the day. Former 4-star defensive lineman Quayshawn Fuller, redshirt sophomore, has entered the transfer portal.
Yeah, Quayshawn Fuller is a player that really kind of had a hard time jumping up and grabbing a starting spot ever since arriving in Tallahassee. There was always some guys in front of him. You look back at last year and you see Keir Thomas and Jermaine Johnson come in, I say like 1-year deals almost. That's what the transfer portal is now, but on a 1-year signing practically on their eligibility, and they become immediate starters as kind of expected. And so that pushes back down Fuller, along with, Derek McLendon, who's, expected most certainly to stay on the roster heading into 2022, expected to maybe potentially be a starter, but that just wasn't the case, at least this spring, for Fuller. And it's no knock on him, because I think he's definitely talented. He's one of the nicest guys on the team. If you're ever be able to meet him, he's a guy that's very open and likes to tell what's going on. And then, he's also, I think, a stud player. And I think, he's entering the transfer portal. I think there's some things that, there's other endeavors maybe off the field that he's, wanting to go into. And I support him 100% on those kind of things. And so we'll see what ends up happening. I think with these exit interviews, some of these are really tough, and, I talked a little bit with Kobe Gross after, in the transfer portal and leaving now to go back to JUCO. And he told me that was just a rough, situation for him, because he wanted to be in Garnet and Gold and just things weren't working out. And this is something that Mike Norvell and the exit interviews, this is just a continuous kind of thing where you're trying to figure out going into 2022 and then maybe even 2023, how many scholarship spots are going to be open. But for Fuller's case in particular, this was just and a part of playing time. And I think he saw, Jared Verse come in and become probably your starter on the opposite side of Derek McLendon. And so he's back once again in that same situation of not potentially being a starter. And I do think he has starter capabilities at other programs. I just don't think that would be the case here in Tallahassee. Great frame, worked on his body a whole ton once arriving in Tallahassee. He was a little chubby, a little bit slower, but if you look at him now, it would be a whole 180 from what he's done with his body, and it was definitely impressive. So just a little bit of getting, guys getting ahead of him on the depth chart, and I think that caused a problem for him, and maybe some conversations happened with the defensive staff along with Mike Norvell, and decided to part ways and enter the transfer portal. But I think if he does indeed want to go still on the football route, he's going to find a really great opportunity somewhere and have a potential to start, because it's definitely if people are wondering, is this a major loss for Florida State and such, this is definitely it's a significant loss off of the depth factor, most certainly, because this is a guy that can come in and, like I said, he can play like a starter. He's just not of that caliber maybe right now as of Derek McLendon and Jared Verse. And that's what stinks, because you could throw in a third guy like Fuller and you don't see much drop off in production because he's got that experience. Like I said, worked on his body, he's got the speed, but it is just a tough situation. So is it a major loss for Florida State and just a nasty blow to the defense? Not necessarily, but for depth, in my opinion, absolutely.
Yeah. If you look at the stats and look at what he contributed last season, you see a guy that could definitely step on the field against quality opponents, play a handful of plays, not embarrass himself, contribute, fill the role. But yeah, snap after snap after snap, he's not going to be, or hasn't developed into that type of player. He played the Notre Dame, UMass, Clemson, and Florida games. Came up with 3 total tackles against Notre Dame with 1.5 tackles for loss, and that was his 1 sack in his career for FSU was against Notre Dame. Again, played against UMass, Clemson, and Florida. Last game against Florida had 3 assisted tackles in that game, had a tackle for loss in the Clemson game. So he came in and made a couple plays behind the line of scrimmage. So again, not a guy that's out there for 20 or 25, 30 plays a game in the rotation, but could step in and fill a gap when needed. So yeah, from a depth standpoint, and when you mentioned earlier, definitely a talented guy, the evaluation coming out of high school is pretty stellar. 14th rated strong side defensive end in the country, 28th rated player in the state of Florida. I was looking at numbers just the other day on talent depth in Florida. There are 71. Now, this is not his class, but the numbers are going to be almost identical. 71 4-stars in Florida, this recruiting class of 2022. So he was 28th rated in his class of 19 and a top 200 player in the nation. So somebody's going to be glad to have him on the roster, and probably, depending on what level he shoots for, probably competing for a starting spot.
Yeah, no, I think he's definitely getting an opportunity. And it's worth noting, too, this is now the 10th recruit from Willie Taggart's 2019 class to depart or leave from the program. So kind of going back to, if I wish Jason was here, that'd be great to, bring up. I rarely bring up Willie's name unless Jason's on here just to rile him up. But this is worth noting, the 10th player out of that 2019 class. That's the 10th player. You're getting close to about the whole class here in a minute. With the numbers, but that just goes to show. And this is not I shouldn't even bring that up really, but this is not I don't want to say a Willie Taggart player. This is, like we've been talking about, this is a talented guy that is going to be missed in the depth part of Florida State's defense. And you're got to look now, looking ahead, you look at a guy that was shining and maybe was told they were going to get more playing time in 2022, and that's Patrick Payton. A guy that Nate, who comes on here and does a few reaction videos after games, one of our guys, our lead recruiting insider, he's very high on Pat Payton. And, I think he predicted Pat Payton to have a big spring before it started. And, well, look at this. He might have moved up in the ranks and maybe taken a spot to get more playing time over Krishan Fuller, or at least they see more, because I do think Pat Payton has a little bit more of a higher ceiling, still raw, still putting on a little bit more size, which he most certainly did this last spring, Mark. But that's a really young, talented defensive end that came into Florida State and is looking to make some strides. In this last spring, Pat Payne absolutely dominated. One of the scrimmages alone, I heard, was probably the best offensive player on the field, and that's a young defensive end coming from him. And, looking at him at practices, on goal line, and pass rush, just disrupting plays, that's something Pat Payton has done. And I think the staff maybe is looking forward to giving him more playing time to get him some more experience, because they see a big year 3 out of him. Still a young player, redshirt freshman. So third year in the system. That's probably what they're expecting for him to make that jump in 2023, but they want to give him some more burn in 2022 just because of the evaluations that they're seeing and the play that he's been having. Because, like I said, the scrimmage, from what I heard, the second one, what was special from Pat Payton. And then looking at him in practices, I can see it firsthand. Norvell allows us to be on hand at all of these practices this last spring, which is very nice of him. But for us to actually see him and evaluate him and see him dominate this last camp was impressive. And, that's probably your guy. If you're expecting someone to move up, if you're looking down at the depth chart and saying, oh, well, who's it going to be? You kind of already know you got Dennis Briggs, you've got Derek McClendon, you got Jared Verse, and now you're starting to see Pat Payton, another young guy I'm looking at too. Not going to see a lot of burn in 2022. Not in 2022, but it's going to be Dante Anderson, who, we haven't gotten full confirmation on him yet, but he's either on full or half or quarter kind of scholarship here. But wow, as a true freshman coming, I thought had a really impressive spring. But he's not going to play a factor till later. But I think Florida State feels good about that defensive end room, where heading into spring, it was a whole opposite. So now it's weird to see, oh, wow, let's just go ahead and lose a defensive end. But now you feel a little bit more secure heading into this next season with what you got.
Logan, you got me curious. I filed up that 2019 class from Willie Taggart. You know what we're going to need to do? We're looking for content and looking for ideas on topics. We should start with the 21 class, since guys are already transferring. Start with the 21 class, take a class each week, run through the class, look at each player. What happened to this dude? Was he a 4-star bust? Was he a 3-star? Man, he's turned into an impact player. What happened to him? Look at everybody. Just to see how these rosters are constructed and how they've worked out. What I would love, and I say this all the time, and this would be a ridiculous project for somebody to take on, but to reevaluate these classes. And I know people have done it for specific teams to say, okay, Florida State 2018, I'm going to re-rank the class, but you really can't do that unless you re-rank every class in the country. You can't re-rank just one class. Yeah, you can say, did this class turn out? It was the 12th rated class in the country, but it really didn't turn out to be that good, or it turned out to be better, whatever. You can do that. But if you're going to re-rank, you got to re-rank all of them at the same time and figure out, did this 5-star turn out to be what? Did this 4-star turn out to be what? I saw an interesting stat the other day concerning the NFL draft that we're going to get into at some point here, that about 40% of 5-stars get drafted. And then it goes down to about 10 to 12% of 4-stars. And then 3-stars are more in the 3% range. And then, if you're a 2-star, it's 1 out of a zillion. And so the recruiting rankings pretty much follow through to the NFL draft.
Yeah, no, and that makes definitely sense. It makes sense for that to happen, and people get a knock on rankings. And yes, some are off, some are on, but if you're looking for a pattern, that's most certainly a pattern that will show you, yeah, this guy has a chance. And you got to, of course, put it on the field when you get into college. But going to the last couple of classes, at least, that time between Jimbo leaving and then really last couple of classes that Jimbo had going into Willie Taggart, so that was just almost a 4-year mess, because you're still seeing guys were flying out too. after Jimbo's last 2 classes, and not just flying out, but the locker room was just a total mess. And then Willie Taggart came in and tried to fix it and kind of be a little bit more friendly and stuff. And that just wasn't going to work from the past players that were playing for Jimbo, because that's not what they were used to. So it just created a whole cluster F and just wasn't pretty. And that makes sense. I know we have this whole summer to talk about it, but it's crazy how many guys are leaving the program, and that's something Norvell, as his biggest thing was cleaning up that locker room. That's been done. I think now, in my opinion, I think he's preparing for 2023. I think he really liked what he saw this spring, and he told us that, and he looked pretty happy from majority of it. And got to see him last season after losing to Jacksonville State, and wasn't so happy there, but just to see how happy he was now in the spring and have a little bit more smiles, and he feels a little bit more confident, I feel like, in the way he's talking. I think he really liked the spring, and if they're trimming down some of this roster to prepare to have a good 2022 season and the long game, which would be a crazy mastermind thing of Norvell to do, but he is a freak to prepare for 2023 already with a bigger class, knowing that if he were to grab 8 wins in 2022, knowing that he can probably, that's one of the last things he needs to do in order to build, probably to solidify himself in a top 5 probably class, with how well they're doing on the recruiting side, getting these guys in. That's probably going to help him close if he's winning these games. He might be thinking a little bit more ahead of us, because trimming some of these guys off seems a little tough, and you want to have these guys for depth, but he's seeing something that maybe we're not, and he could be looking ahead to 2023. So that's just something I've kind of had in the back of my brain. That would be a crazy smart move from him, because he did say the spring camp, that was the best spring camp they've had, and he feels really, really confident.
We can only imagine what else is in the back of your brain, Logan. That might be a scary project to delve into.
You and I both. Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. And definitely looking at this 2019 class, you mentioned 10 guys left. It's a decent list of contributors in regards to who stepped up as transfers. So Desean Corbin was a transfer in that class. Jordan Wilson, Miko Dotson, Devontae Love Taylor. So they also picked up some pretty productive players as well. But yeah, going through each class, I'm going to make that, I think, our project over the summer. That would be pretty intriguing.
Let's do it.
Folks, if Gator George can hit the like button, even if he can hit the like button, everybody else can hit the like button. So it's not hard. So please do that for us. Please
smack it, hit the like button. We probably, I know it's a morning show. I think everybody is in shock that you're doing a morning show, Mark, but
I think so.
Little do they know that you sometimes go to 12 a.m., 1 a.m. So you're used to doing morning
shows. Yeah. Shoot, when I was at ESPN, I'd roll in at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning every so often. And if I had something to say, boom, strike up the live stream. I'd be shocked. 100 people would show up at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, I remember those days. I remember those because I'd come back from a club and I'd go on YouTube just to find something to watch in bed. I'd be like, what the heck is going on, Mark's Live? And I just go sit there and watch until I passed out.
I was just surprised and happy that without any warning or any notification that 100 people would show up to watch a live stream at 3 o'clock in the morning.
People are crazy.
All right. We got Montre here. We appreciate you being here. So he wants kind of a feel on how much the portal is going to be used. We've only got the rest of the week into Sunday. That's the deadline, May 1st. And then, do you know, Logan, that after May 1st, that's the deadline to enter the transfer portal? Do they have to make a decision on where they're going by a certain date? I think it's somewhere in June.
Yep, I believe
it's like a month later.
Yeah, I believe you got at least a month or so. I don't have that exact date, but I'm going back to like Dylan Gibbons. I'm trying to remember. He was late last year, and Jermaine was around this time though, but I forget about Dylan. There was definitely some late guys. I mean, I remember Cushney, who was a defensive end, that I never fully understood that take, but he's long gone. But he was really, really late, like almost a couple weeks before fall camp started. So I think it goes pretty late, and you can always find a way to beat the system. But yeah, so Montre's asking, do you want me to answer that down there?
Sure.
Who do you see going? So I think there's going to be some moves here. I don't know in the quarterback realm of things at Florida State what they're going to do here, because you've got your solidified starter in Jordan Travis, but I do think Florida State needs to find some depth there and potentially find a guy that can back up Jordan Travis, at least that fits the system of Norvell and Coach Atkins' offense. Really, I'm just going to say Coach Norvell's offense, but I think there's got to be some depth there, and I think Florida State really needs a second stringer. I'm not too sold on what I saw this spring from Rodemaker and AJ Duffy for me to feel fine with Jordan Travis going down in the game, which, the majority of last season you saw, and so you got to find some depth there. So we'll keep an eye on the quarterback room. I wouldn't be shocked still if Florida State looks into the DB market, and that just continues to be a thing for them. There's a few names being flirted around and some rumors, but I don't really want to say anything yet. But in your realm, neck of the woods, Mark, up there in Ohio State, there's some rumors of some guys that Florida State is heavily interested in. You can say heavily interested. They might have just knocked on the phone and seen what's going on and just got to know them, but until something starts really going, we'll talk about it. But Florida State, I think, the biggest thing has got to go to offensive line and go into tackle. And if they can find a guy that is going to have some promise with experience, I think Florida State's got to go to the tackle spot.
One thing about this transfer portal process I've never heard explained, and maybe you've picked up on this from your many conversations with guys that have gone through the process. How involved is that? Are these guys just sitting down, getting on a database and pretty much just filling out their name and an ID number? Or is it as complicated as filling out a tax form? Or, what does that involve, going into the transfer portal and putting your name in there?
Yeah. Geez, I don't know. It's got to probably be like, hey, it might be as simple as that. Honestly, I want to get access to that database so then I can know who's entered first and everything. I don't know how you get the access to that, but if anybody's out there that can help me out on that and get me a username and password, that would definitely be essential to our coverage here on the Mark Rogers Show in the morning, like Mike is saying. But I don't know. I don't know how that works, but hopefully one that will enter soon is a tackle that wants to get close to immediate playing time, because I think not only that, I think Florida State is pretty fine there, your starting group, but depth-wise, I'm worried about it because what we saw in the spring was not so great, and I thought that was one of the weakest parts of the camp and the position groups was that second-string offensive line. It wasn't really too fair, though, because I think Florida State's defensive line is, a couple of levels ahead of Florida State's offensive line, but you still got to find some pieces to where they can make a damn play and block, because it just wasn't pretty. And you're seeing second, third stringers in there be able to run through. You got freshmen coming through, and that just cannot happen. That cannot happen. This is where Coach Atkins is once again, he's put in a tough spot, but now he's getting his talent in, but it's not going to be immediate this year. He grabbed one of the most talented offensive line classes, if not the most talented offensive line class in this last turnaround, and those are true freshmen coming in. We're not expecting Julian Armella, one of the highly talented offensive linemen in that group, to come in and play right away. But I saw some promising signs from Daughtry Richardson. You see a little bit from Kaniah Charlton, still got a lot of work to do on his body, but these are guys that are going to be a year two, potentially year three for some of them. But there are some year two guys that I think are going to jump in and have some potential next year, but it's not going to happen this year. So you got to look at the portal.
The first team I thought of when you started going through the offensive line and some of the issues you're seeing, and of course, again, being matched up against a superior defensive line in practice, but not being expected to maybe be fully capable against the first teamers. But when you mentioned some of the rookies and some of the second and third teamers able to hit gaps and get through, and it not being the prettiest thing. first team I thought of is LSU. So week 2, LSU, and you've got a serious SEC team with a serious defensive line that's going to line up obviously against those guys in week 2. And they're very similar teams and very similar programs right now. They're in a place where they're trying to build something, trying to put things together. They're not anywhere close to where they want to be at LSU or at Florida State. They obviously have a new head coach. He's throwing players all over the place, trying to come up with different combinations. They got a 4 quarterback competition. So they've got a lot going on there. Really 3, because the one guy's a true freshman, a 5-star Walker Howard, but really the other 3 guys are going at it. So it's two teams that for me are going to be fascinating this year, because they could break either way. They could take off and really build towards something, just like Florida State could. Or, it's been a rough couple of years for LSU, just like Florida State, but they're 2 vintage programs that we expect to be, making an impact on the national scene, but they're kind of in a transition phase. So it's going to be a fascinating game. That's for sure.
This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to being over there for that one. And it's going to be 2 teams that, if someone's going to have the upside here, and you've got a coach that's in the 3rd year, practically, it's got to be Mike, and you got to think that he's got the head start on that. And in my opinion, he's got to be. I know, LSU has talent there, but this can't be excuse time anymore. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, like 86,000 times before the season starts, but this is no excuse time anymore for Mike Norvell. And, he definitely knows that. And I think the program knows that. There's a reason why they're pushing about everything they can. In the last couple of months, you're seeing them put a lot into this season, off the field hires. You see Michael Alford, Florida State's new AD, putting a lot of focus into this football program. And, that's just not in the LSU game whatsoever, because that's just not your 1 year. That's not your one game, and that's it for the season. You've got to go in and finish off the rest of this 2022 slate of games. And like I said, I think this spring was really, really good. When you saw upsides, but then, like we just talked about, you saw some downsides of the offensive line and the depth there. And that's something that has to be fixed, or you go into that LSU game, you lose one guy down, God forbid 2 guys down, or, you're working with a guy that's injured, you don't have a solid replacement to come in and play. You're getting a little bit vulnerable there. So we'll look at the transfer portal. Still got some time here, but like you said, only got about less than a week than that to enter your name. So whichever offensive tackle is out there, you can email me at logan@nolegameday.com. Email me then, and we'll get something set up where you can get a trip over to Tallahassee. And no NIL. James has the NIL stuff, so you have to go to James to do all that kind of stuff. I don't have the NIL money, though.
It's a pretty good system, though. They can contact you, get all set up with the contact, and then you just pass them on to James.
Exactly. We'll work that system. I don't know if that will alter Coach Atkins and what they're doing, but anyway, I can help Coach Atkins. I am here.
Nice. Well, we are just about a day and a half away from the NFL draft. So 8:00 on a Thursday night is when it all goes down. And it's not going to be, it appears, long after the draft kickoff at 8 Eastern that Jermaine Johnson is going to hear his name called. He is climbing up the boards. And wow, he really made some money for himself by coming to FSU and showing out in 21.
Yeah, absolutely dominating the competition in 2021. And I'm not entirely sure. I don't think, definitely not me. I didn't have those kind of expectations for him to do what he did, because 1 year guy, you don't know what kind of mindset he's in, Mark. Like, is he going to buy into really what Norvell's doing? Is he going to buy into a team that won 3 games the previous year? Like, what is this guy's buying? And I wasn't buying that he was going to buy in as fully as he did. And damn, I was definitely wrong about that, because I swear to God, I feel like he's like the biggest advocate, the biggest supporter of Mike Norvell. And you see that. And I think this is going to be a player that is going to be around the program for years to come. And that's crazy for a guy that hasn't been even on campus for a year to leave a legacy like that. And for the whole fan base in Tallahassee to love him like they do goes to show, what kind of buy-in he really had into this program. And I think Florida State fans are going to have a pretty fun Thursday night because, like you were saying, Mark, he's really, since the season ended, just continued to go up in these mock drafts. And it started with that Senior Bowl with him dominating. I forget the Kentucky offensive lineman,
Yeah, I
that
do too.
tackle.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
though.
and it starts with a K or somewhere in there, and it's a weird name, but dominating that highly regarded Kentucky offensive tackle, doing that a few times, doing a few more things, and then just saying, "Yep, I'm gonna go ahead and call it there. I don't need to play in the game." And he really started rocketing up in mock drafts, and the scouts loved him. And I was on a Jet Spaces last night with Damian Woody, and a few other Jets outlets, and they were talking about while at the senior practice week and the senior game, the scouts just couldn't talk enough about Jermaine Johnson. And so now you're speculating, well, Jets have the number 4 pick. What could they do? The Texans also, there's smoke that they heavily like Jermaine Johnson too at number 3. So this goes from a guy that was a late first round, early second during the season last year to now creeping up into potentially the top 5, at least the top 10. And I don't think he'll go anywhere after a top 15, but that's extremely, extremely impressive. And you got to go back to Jalen Ramsey here. And he's in that range of guys being picked early since Jalen. And then you go back always, of course, to Jameis Winston. But this could be an exciting night for Florida State fans on Thursday. Did you happen to find that player's name?
Darian Kennard.
Yep, Kennard. God dang it. Yeah, I absolutely dominated him. And he's one of the most highly touted offensive tackles going into this NFL draft. And, he did what he needed to do. He had the NFL combine and performed very well. I know that the scouts really liked that 40 time, and he looked good on the field. And then he comes over to Pro Day and ties the most reps on bench, which was extremely impressive for, I think, his arm length, because I think people aren't understanding for him to get that many bench reps, which I should know it because I was in attendance and I just completely lost the number, but I believe 32 or in that range. All I know is he tied with Kayvon Thibodeau. And, I just think the arm length that Jermaine has, for him to have that many reps on bench, is even more impressive in my opinion, because you've got some defensive ends out there that have shorter arms. I mean, if you look at Keir Thomas too, and I'm not giving any knock on him because I have a few things to say about him, but Keir, significantly has shorter arms, man, and still couldn't bench. And I thought Keir was a little bit bigger than Jermaine, but Jermaine just absolutely knocked it out of the park with just all of his drills, lifts, and I believe definitely, I think in a lot of these meetings with scouts and coaches, I think he's obviously doing all of those 3 right, because he just keeps rising and rising to where he might knock off Kayvon Thibodeau to be that number 2 defensive end to be picked. Which is, and that's just crazy to think of. You're looking at last season, you probably had arguably one of the best. I mean, there's arguments going on right now that he and Aiden Hutchinson are the best defensive ends. You had one of the best, if not the best, defensive end in the country last season on your squad. And it showed, being the ACC Defender of the Year and absolutely dominating against Miami, which is worth noting because we've always got some Miami fans in here. Absolutely dominating them. That I think Dalvin Cook and Jermaine Johnson is something that Miami fans never want to hear of anymore.
No doubt. He had his way. And yeah, Dalvin Cook single-handedly flip some scores for the Noles. No doubt about that. Yeah. We have quite the back and forth going on between Miami and FSU fans, as always. But this one's a little bit more active this time.
Yeah.
In the chat. Yep.
Yeah, they're definitely going at it this. I love this at 10:30 in the morning, just going at it like nothing's going on here, just talking some football and just I mean, that's the thing about these rivalries. N State, I mean, let's just argue all the time. I mean, that's what we're going to be doing the next, what is it, April now, May, June, July, August, at least 4 months, 5 months from now. And that's only going to accelerate from now. But really, we just kind of get bored here and just start arguing with each other about really anything at all.
So,
But yeah.
so Dalvin Cook, just want to make sure I got this straight because I think I think I got this straight. So you're telling me Miami fans don't like to see that name?
Oh no. Yeah, no, they definitely don't like seeing that. Putting up the 305 there, right there in their end zone was definitely nasty. One of the best pictures you'll see in college football history, with that shot from behind him looking at Miami fans in the stands. Well, yeah, Miami fans, I guess we could say. But yeah, they don't like Dalvin, and they're definitely not going to like seeing Jermaine Johnson potentially be a number 3 or 4 pick. It really depends. The Jets really like him. It's all going to come down to true evaluations of what they did, I think, in these meeting rooms. And there's talk about Kayvon Thibodeau. And does he fully really invest himself into football? Does he love football? I think some of that stuff is just silly. I think some of that is just so dramatic a little bit. And that's just media just saying some silly things just to get some clicks, honestly. Yeah. It's a little over the top. But
I was having that conversation with an Oregon guy this week, and I said, okay, so Kayvon Thibodeau made it very known that he went to Oregon because of Nike and the potential to spin that into some positive benefits going forward. Okay. And now he's making some comments about, again, using his football career to go forward. Well, for one thing, if he went to Oregon and was a bust, he wouldn't be getting drafted, or he'd be getting drafted in the 5th, 6th, or 7th round, and he would not have set himself up. But he went to Oregon. He fulfilled his potential, showed that he's the player that he was recruited to be. So he set himself up for this. So he went on the field and produced. And in the NFL, the same thing. Some of the things he's talking about, he's not going to be able to achieve unless he turns out to be at least a good player in the NFL, if not a great player. So a guy that says, I went to Oregon because of these reasons, I don't see that as being any different than saying, I chose to go to Oregon because I like the accounting department. We wouldn't say, well, isn't he focused on football? Mm-hmm. If he said, I went because I really like the Northwest, we wouldn't be complaining that he wasn't into football, that he was too much into his education or went for some other reason. But
yeah, it's all West Coast kind of. I think they look at, all the outlets maybe over here in the Southeast, judging the kid for maybe being more invested in the future. And I give some respect to him. And I think, if he doesn't fully like football, then he doesn't fully like football. But I don't think that's the case. And if I think it's a smart move for him, I don't blame him for going over to Oregon and, looking at, whatever he wants to build ventures, whatever he wants to do business wise. I mean, if you're going into business and you're going into school for that, and you're also playing football, what a better place to go over there in Oregon and learn from one of the best to ever do it, literally. Yeah. And so I'm not too worried about that, but there is definitely talk now. I mean, it is, I still think the Jaguars will do what they need to do and grab Hutchinson, but now who's number 2? When I think there's definitely a battle there on who that's going to be. Is it going to be Kayvon? Is it going to be Jermaine Johnson? You look back at Kayvon Thibodeau's game in the Pac-12 championship, and you see a little bit of some lackluster plays and some not being finished. And I know that's what a few scouts, including Daniel Jeremiah, weren't too much of a fan of. And it's just the little things. It's all going to come down to the staff and how they feel with whichever team, the Houston Texans, the Jets, because the Jets, I think, are a team that are just a few little pieces away from making a big jump, because we saw little signs from it last year, but they still need a wide receiver. They do want to have they want to definitely have a defensive end, and they most certainly want to tackle. But I think, or offensive lineman, I think they have some room here to work with because they have 2 picks here in the first round, I do believe. And so you can grab a wide receiver, you can grab a Jameson Williams from Alabama, or you can grab Jermaine Johnson, but it depends on where you want to grab him. I believe the Jets have the number 10. I think they have a 4th and a 10, if I'm right here. I'm trying to see, because it's really going to come down on what they so they have a 4 and a 10. So if I'm looking at teams that could be, I'm not entirely sure what the Detroit wants to do at 2, but Houston Texans, Jets, yes, they're in need for defensive end. And I shoot, if Jermaine Johnson doesn't get picked with between 1 and 9 there, the Jets they know they're silly if they don't grab Jermaine by then. But I just don't know if Jermaine's going to drop that far, in my opinion. Defensive end is the biggest. I mean, this is a great class of defensive ends by far. This is really talented, but nowadays defensive end is one of your vital parts, if not the most vital part on a defense right now, most certainly. Between now on the offense, you got tackle on. There's a reason why tackles get paid. There's a reason why they get drafted so early, because you look on the other side and you're facing defensive ends. And so those 2 go 1 and 2. And so I just don't see Jermaine dropping after 10 on Thursday.
Yeah. I wish I could remember what the draft guy we had on yesterday. So we had a conversation with this would be a guy right in this wheelhouse, because this guy turned out to be a Florida State fan. He had a Florida State shirt on, and he's a Jets fan. But I didn't grab him because of that. He calls himself ESPN Draft Nerd. He works for ESPN Asheville. He's a radio host for ESPN Asheville. But yeah, he thinks the Jets are going to grab, or he wants them. Shoot, I cannot remember who he wants at 4, but he thinks Jermaine Johnson's coming at 10. That's what he's hoping for.
Yeah, no, if he goes to 10, that is a great pick for the Jets too, because like I said, the Jets aren't far off away from making a run. I don't think. I think that they've got some high potential in 2022, which is crazy to think of. I know the Jets and pushing for a playoff, but that's the realistic scenario for them, because you saw the signs last year and they're just a few little pieces away, but they have a chance of grabbing a defensive end and a wide receiver there, and they're cooking. And I think they know what they've got in their quarterback, so they're feeling it. And definitely if they can go later on, now I feel like I'm talking for the Jets, but they can go later on too and grab an offensive lineman. That they feel good. But we just keep seeing Jermaine rise and rise and rise. And I don't know. Could this be a top 5 guy? Is it top 10? But if he does go top 5, I think Florida State fans are going to go bananas, because if you look at it, there's definitely Aiden Hutchinson. Let's just say he's off the mark. Then you've got Thibodeau and Jermaine, and Detroit could potentially do something here. And then the Texans, most certainly, and Jets. So you're looking at in the top 4 right there. Those guys can all grab a defensive end. It's going to be interesting. It would be crazy to see that he might go and be a top 5 player in this NFL draft, which would, talk about recruiting, not only high school recruiting, but now, which Norvell has put a big emphasis on, transfer portal.
Yep.
Man, whew, you got to hope that happens. Norvell is could be a happy man Thursday night.
Absolutely, because you're showing people that you show a certain level of player that they can get drafted anywhere. Then you show another level of player that, we can get you to a place where you're going to make big money, show out going into the draft, and bam, you can hit the jackpot.
Not even a year on campus. Not even a year. If he does go top 5, the marketing team, graphic designers, they better be up all night. So whenever they're posting in the morning on Friday, they have everything ready to go. That's all I got to say.
Okay, I'm going to acknowledge the at least 2 Miami fans in the chat. We got Ronan here. We got Casey here. Appreciate you guys being here and showing up for our Miami shows, of course, but you get on over here for the Florida State shows as well. I see it on the Miami shows as well. The FSU fans come over more than any other fan base, and it happens here, of course, and has since day one. The Miami guys crashing the party. So that's fine. So I'm going to serve this up for Logan since Casey's asking for it, and I'm going to give my small take first. Okay. Because I think Casey might be accusing Logan of something he's not necessarily ever stated here in the last couple of years. But here's my take on the two teams right now. I think Miami's a better team than Florida State. Do I think it's significant? Not really. They had a better season last year, but the two teams obviously got on the field at the same time, and Florida State won the game. So who's got bragging rights right this second? FSU has the bragging rights. They won the game head to head. 5-7, 7-5. Are either one of those records Florida State or Miami standard? Not even close. But Miami was a little bit better last year, evidenced by that record. Do they look to be much better this year or decidedly better? They should be. So should Florida State. So there's my take at least on it. But Casey, let me read the comment.
I'm glad Jason is in here.
Please ask them why they feel they're better than Miami at this point. We have momentum. Also, I don't know what momentum necessarily means. You hired a really good coaching staff. So if that's momentum, yes. It's up to anybody's evaluation whether it's a better coaching staff and AD and money being put behind the program and recruiting.
So we're going where this is the Miami thing of off-season Super Bowl. This is off-season Super Bowl. It's the usual kind of thing coming down from Miami. But, I mean, yeah, great. First off, I was already reading this earlier in the comments, and I was like, well, this is easy for me to go at because, all right, you got a better coaching staff. Well, let's see it this season. You know, I want to see that whenever it actually happens, and I want to see the AD. You know, you could go back and look at Florida State and what we just talked about. We talked about earlier. I mentioned Michael Alford and the AD and what he's doing here at Florida State. I'm not even going to just have a whole argument about AD and, oh, my God, Florida State is better than Miami, blah, blah. The money, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of evaluations on NIL, what's going to be happening there in Miami and what they're doing. But that's the same case for everywhere. I mean, you know, Florida State is trying to get heavily into the collective space, and they were behind. They were one of the slowest teams or one of the slowest programs, and they're not affiliated with Florida State. We know this, but they're one of the slowest to get going and get the rumblings going, get the rotation happening with building a staff, building a collective to get going in the NIL space. So if we're talking money there and how that's going to work, yada, yada, yada. I mean, there's going to be competition for Florida State with Miami, Florida, most certainly, because the Gator Collective has been around a little bit more. You got to like the signs that Florida State's making, at least with Rising Spear. You know, hopefully we'll be able to have James on to talk about what his is, which I think his is a little bit more hands-on with the players to help them on the business side of things, a little bit more of some more instructive type of leadership on helping them growing their brand and building them. But I'll let James talk more about that once we have him on soon. But, you know, I don't want to, you know, this is all off-season stuff. We're just going to continuously do this nonstop, and it's always the case with Miami fans. The Florida fans are a little bit more hush-hush because they know they've got Willie Napier down there. I mean, Billy Napier, my bad, not Willie Napier, my bad. I don't know why Willie's name came up to me for some reason, but Napier down there in Gainesville. But, you know, this is the fun about Miami fans, and they like to have a good time in the comments. But at least let me go to the better coaching staff stuff. Let's talk about that once we're 6 games in, at least 6 games, if not a season next year, because, you know, Florida State's, you know, we've said the same thing, man, this coaching staff, this is great. Kendall Briles is just awesome. We're going to change it all. This is great. And then you look at it and it's not so pretty at the outcome of the season. So let's give it some time. Let's see what's happening. Do I think that Florida State is like better team than Miami right now? Nope. You know, I want to see on the field, and let's get to whenever Florida State faces them this next season and actually get some true results before we get to that. But I think these teams are right there in line with one another, and I think there's potential for both sides of them. And I think they see a lot of momentum in the transfer portal. And if we're finding momentum from that defensive lineman, I want to say Darnell Jackson. Hold up. It's a line commit. The transfer from Maryland, Darnell.
Yep.
Yep, Darnell Jackson. Yeah, if we're going to talk about them finding some momentum there, congratulations. He wasn't going to start nor be in the 2 deep for Florida State this next season. I'm not even being like silly with it. I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but this kid was not going to be in the 2 deep at Florida State. He definitely wasn't going to start over Robert Cooper or Fabian Lovett, 2 potential highly touted NFL products going in this next season, nor was he going to start over Malcolm Ray or Jarrett Jackson. So where the hell was he going to go? Congratulations. He's down to the 305 for you guys. He's definitely a talented player. I think that's a great get for Miami, but he wasn't going to play at Florida State this next season. If he's looking to transfer and find immediate play or higher up in the depth charts, that's where Miami, you can do that because there's more open spots. And like I said, he's a talented player, but he just wasn't going to have a lot of playing time in Tallahassee. So there's that. I know he visited Florida State, so the Miami fans are like, "Oh, y'all lost on him." Nah, brought him in, evaluated, told him the real deal, the real spiel. That's kind of what Norvell does, and Higgins will tell him straight up. And you're gonna have to compete at least. And he probably saw what he was probably gonna have to be playing against. And what we saw this last spring camp with Cooper and Fabian Lovett, along with Malcolm Ray, Jarrett Jackson, you got Joshua Farmer too. You're not going to pass up on 2, let alone 3 or 4 of those guys. So there's the case there on all that momentum talk.
Here's my quick take. I got another quick take on this one. Okay. Miami fans, I understand why you're excited. You have a reason to be optimistic. You have reason to be hopeful. You have reason to be excited and to wear it and shout it and go nuts about it. You hired a coach who's won Pac-12 championships, who won a Rose Bowl, a coaching staff that includes Kevin Steele, Josh Gaddis, Charlie Strong. It looks good on paper. Okay. And you got a good recruiting base, and things should get better. You got a really good quarterback. You've got a core of a good team. Not a great team, good team, top 15 to 25 team. You should. Okay. But on the other hand, understand, Miami fan, that you haven't done anything in 20 years. Understand that if you're a Florida State fan or a Florida fan, you can jump on Miami easily because those programs have been better than you more recently. Yes, Florida State's sucked for the last 3 years and not been very good for 4 or 5 years. Yes, but they've more recently finished in the top 10, won double-digit games, won major bowl games, and, of course, a national championship in 2013 and back to a playoff in 2014. That's much more recent than 2001, 2002. Florida, the same thing. For as bad as Florida's been, shoot, they just went to an SEC championship game 2 years ago. They've won SEC championships, been to SEC title games multiple times in the last decade. They won national titles in 06 and 08, much more recent than Miami. So if you're looking at projection, optimism, I get it. Good coach. He's accomplished some things. He should do a good job there. But you hired a much more accomplished coach 4 or 5 years ago in Mark Richt. That didn't turn out for maybe other reasons, not related to football, unfortunately. But he was a much more accomplished coach than Mario Cristobal. But yes, I understand the optimism, but it has yet to be proven over and over and over and over and over and over and over. So we're going on 20 years of irrelevance.
Yeah.
So I get the optimism if I'm a Miami fan, but also if you want to push back, it's easy to do because it's not been proven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we'll see. Like I said, we're going to wait. We can't go off of, KC. I do respect the profile picture there. I do respect that. But everything else, though, we'll have to wait and evaluate once the season is over. But I want to mention real quick, Keir Thomas being slept on in the NFL draft. Make sure you grab him. If my Steelers want him, I'll take him. And then number 2, Desean Corbin. What system do I think he fits well in? Running back. I think he'll be the number 2 guy to go for Florida State. But I think he fits well in the Kansas City Chiefs type offense where, you've got multiple guys in the running back room. I don't think he's a solidified one guy, running back in the NFL. But keep an eye on Jordan Wilson and Emmett Rice being late late guys, if not being picked up really, really quickly on a practice squad. And that's about it, in my opinion. I think it's going to go real quick. Jermaine Johnson, Corbin, and Corbin and Kira should be in that same realm, in my opinion. If Kira goes far back, that's wild, because he didn't get his NFL Combine invite, which was arrestable. Someone should be arrested for that. And I think Jordan Wilson, tight end, and Emmett Rice are kind of like your 5 guys to keep an eye on. No, I'm not expecting Mackenzie Milton to be drafted. I don't think anybody is, but
well,
great guy.
Would have been nice. That would have been an amazing story, and I hope he does very well in life as a coach or whatever business he wants to pursue. He's a great guy. Seems like a class individual, and it's just too bad what happened to him. He was remarkable for 2 years at UCF, but that's what happened, and he's just not the player he was.
Yeah.
All right. Again, get on over to Noel Game Day. Get out over to Patreon. Join the Discord there. I got to run. Appreciate Logan making this happen today. And we've got another show that had to move. So next live show right now, if you want to talk more college football, Ohio State Buckeyes live on our Ohio State channel coming up as soon as I can turn it around in the next 2 or 3 minutes. Logan, appreciate you making this happen, man.
Mark, enjoy the NFL draft tomorrow night. See y'all.